in the piece, the man has had, a heart attack. And he's in the ambulance. They're following him in the ambulance. I didn't do that. I wasn't on that shoot. And he's talking. His wife is there, and he ends up passing away. And it was just, 20 frames earlier, he was alive, and then he's gone.
Oh, that's terrible. So on camera,
yeah, it was
he
on
passed.
camera.
Oh,
yeah,
that's awful.
So it was such a, these stories that that had such an impact on me. Of course, I've never forgotten it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Unglamorous in the City with Smitha Rao. Guys, I know I say this every time, but today I am extra excited because you know how you have those people in your life who have really just been such pivotal people? Well, you're looking at one of mine. This is Christiane Arbesu. She is the founder of Terrebonne Productions, and she is a former boss of mine. Obviously one of the best bosses ever in the world. So I am so excited to have you here today. We're going to have such a good conversation. Christiane has really taught me a lot of what I know when it comes to video production, video editing, and all of the fun things. So we're going to get into all of that. And Christiane is the woman, if you ever need anyone to do any kind of video production, you are looking at the master of the universe. So I'm just going to start with that, Christiane. I'm just going to throw it out there.
What an introduction. Okay.
You deserve that 100%.
Oh, thank you.
But in all honesty, thank you for being here. I can't wait to dive into some of these things. You have had and continue to have such a fascinating career. You've done so many amazing things. I mean, I don't even think we have enough time to talk about all of it, but I'd love, for everyone watching and listening, who is Christiane?
Oh my God, this wasn't in the list of questions that you sent me. Who is Christiane?
Tell me more about your career and your path, of course. I should say that.
Okay. Well, no, I think that the first, that was a good question. I didn't expect it. But I guess Christiane is hardworking and someone that really pursues and goes after her dream. And my mom always taught me that you never accept no for an answer if you really believe in something. So she taught me at a really early age to, accept the things I can't change, but to really work at being able to change the things that I know that I can. And one of the things that I wanted to change or wanted to do with my life was to get into television, video production, and making movies. And everything that I wanted to do and said that I was going to do, I pretty much have accomplished it. I mean, it doesn't really matter the scale at which I've done it, but I have managed to do it. And I moved to New York City. I was born in Montreal, and I moved here in 1985 and got into an internship at Channel 13 through a good friend of mine at the time. She was an editor at PBS, WNET, here at Channel 13 in New York City. And I just worked my way up the ladder and eventually started running 2 companies.
And I was going to say, that's such the TV path, right? It's you start off, you're really doing all of the things and everything, and then running 2 companies, not 1, but 2.
No, I think 3. But because for other people, 2. And then I started my own video production company in 2017.
Perfect. And tell me a little bit more about your video production company.
Oh, the name of the company is Terrebonne Productions. I grew up on that street in NDG in Montreal.
Shout out to all the Canadians who are listening or watching.
To all the Montrealers and Canadians. And it means good earth. So the company started in 2017. And what we do is we create videos. We want to really raise the human consciousness. So we try to do things for social justice, for social change. We do a lot of work for nonprofits. We do our medical, that's our bread and butter, doing, working for pharma companies. But the type of videos that we really take on are patient testimonials, training videos. So you have doctors training each other how to do different techniques. And then we started getting into documentary production back in 2016, 2017. And that's what really launched Terrebonne Productions, telling individual stories, short legacy videos that then extended into longer, documentaries, anywhere from 45 minutes to up to 2 hours.
And let's talk about your documentaries, because you've done some really fun ones. Tell me a little bit about those, some of the work you've done over the years. Just let's dive into that.
Okay. So the first documentary that I did was I Am Arbesu. And, I am is such a, powerful, those two words are so powerful and have such great significance because you're claiming something, right? So back in 2016, when President Obama opened relations with Cuba, I went to Cuba. My entire family was living there at the time. My parents escaped from Cuba in the 60s to Montreal, and my father was the first ambassador of Cuba to Indonesia. My 3 sisters were born at the time. When my father was recalled to Cuba, he saw the changes that were taking place and realized that the country that he fought for, because he fought against Batista and he worked for Fidel Castro, that it had really changed, and those ideals no longer matched his own ideals. So he knew they were going to leave. So they arrived in Montreal, with 3 children. My mother was pregnant with me, and it was a really, really difficult time because they lost everything. So it was the immigrant story, right? Starting from absolutely nothing, losing everything. Also being hailed a communist. My father would never denounce his government because his entire family was in Cuba, as was most of my mother's. And, I always had this longing to meet my family. But because I was living in the States, it was just too iffy to go. Also, my mother was really adamant that I don't go back, as my father as well. Their family kind of cut them off, and they were seen as traitors. So it was very, although it's family, it was just very politically charged and very, emotionally challenging. So I wasn't sure what I was going to be walking into. But of course, it's over 50 years later. Once those doors opened, I decided, my mother had passed away. My father was still alive at the time. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go. I can go legally as an American. And I did with my really good friend, Mimi. She helped me with audio. And it was just such an incredible experience. I met so many cousins. I met some uncles, my aunt, and it was beyond profound to realize that I had this entire family that I never knew existed. Growing up in Montreal, I always felt a little bit lost, a bit sad that all my friends had their grandmothers with them, their grandparents, their cousins. I never had any of that. I never had that luxury.
You bring up a good point. I think a lot of people can identify with that, right? Because, I'm Indian, of course, and I have family in India, but I have family here too. But I don't have, I feel like, the same extended family that a lot of people have if everyone has settled here in the U.S., right? So that is a really good point. And so I'm sure going back, I can't even imagine. It must have been so emotional for you to go back and meet these people and then, of course, tell their stories too.
Sure. And, there's a part in the film, where I say that, it's such an explosion of feelings, right? But it's so profoundly sad because we lost so much time. We only know each other old. We don't know what it's like to be young. But you have to accept the moment, right? And that's pretty much all we have, and live in the moment. And we just look at where we are now today, just in the past 11 years, all or 10 years. So much, we have Thanksgiving meals together. And so many of my family members, there are literally only 2 first cousins that are still in Cuba. Everyone has left. They're either in Montreal, Spain, or Miami. So it's really, it's incredible.
That is incredible, right? When you think about the journeys of all of these people.
Each person, yeah.
That's so cool. I love that you turn, your family and your heritage, I love that you turn that into work too.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And able to share that story in a different way than somebody who didn't have that connection would be able to.
Right. Yeah. No, a lot of people, one of the biggest compliments was that after, we played at a lot of film festivals, and I had no idea it was going to be that well received. And people that I don't know. Of course, the people that they want to know your story, but strangers would say they could totally relate because, like what you just said about your family in India, so many people have had families that have been separated because of politics. And especially now in this day and age, in this climate, it's, it's happening. It happens.
Right. We don't want to get too political, but it's
not
definitely
at all, but
happening.
It does happen.
No,
and
it is.
And
it's a fact.
It's always happened.
Yeah, and it's a fact. No, absolutely. And it's horrible. You see the videos where it's people, kids being torn away from their families.
Yes.
I mean, it's awful.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, well, thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Part of your story. And I do have questions, of course. As you said, we'll make sure we get to them too. So, of course, you're one of the best bosses that I've ever had. What do you think makes a great leader? Because I think that's something, we've talked about it on the podcast before, right? And everyone has a different leadership style. Obviously, I know yours. But what do you think really makes a good leader?
Well, first of all, I'm only one of the best bosses. I thought I was the best boss.
I have fun fact. I have another former boss who was watching all my podcasts. So I got to be careful, Christiane.
I think what makes a good leader, I think you have to listen. You have to really listen to the people that you're serving. And I think by listening, it opens you up and you can really develop or become really attuned with the people that you're working with. And I think compassion is at the key. For me, it is love and compassion. First, I think if you really love what you do, then everything comes naturally. And of course, there are always going to be different personalities and that. You worked for me for quite a few years. But I think listening is really, really important, because by listening and by, getting to know each person individually, you get to understand where they're coming from and why they're there. So I think that's I thought about that answer. And I think just making it fun. I've never been the type that is, I not that I bend the rules, but we always had a lot of fun, and we would just do crazy things, as you know. Yeah. And that just, I think it just makes people feel at ease. And I think when people feel at ease, I wanted to create an environment where people really loved coming into work. Somebody that I worked with years ago said it was like going to work every day was like a dirty slumber party. And we did. We would really have fun and really talk about, well, what was your weekend like and what did you do? Curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Being curious.
And having empathy also, right?
Yes, of course. But having I think that you get, but I think that develops, right?
Yeah.
And when you really are open, having an open heart.
Yeah.
And not always being by the book.
Exactly.
I mean, of course, there are rules that have to be followed. That goes without say. But you can also, you can do different things along the way, right? You can look at things a little bit differently. It's not all black and white.
It's not all black and white. And to your point, a dirty slumber party. I like that. So there's a lot of jokes.
Dirty. Yeah, a lot of jokes. That's true. A lot of crank calls. We used to play a lot of games. That was more at Multiview, the other company, because there were more people.
Yeah.
But, it's just, I miss that. I miss having all that staff.
The camaraderie. And actually, you bring up a good point, right? Because I've talked to a lot of founders and entrepreneurs on this podcast. And right, that's true, because somebody said that the journey to entrepreneurship is lonely. Right?
Yes,
because it's actually exactly what you just said, because you're the one, right? And you're right. And you mentioned Multiview, and we'll talk about what that is in a second for people that don't know. But, this is a company that obviously has just a lot of great people, great minds, talented creatives. So that's their camaraderie kind of naturally builds, right? Yeah. And you obviously were the head of production, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So talk a little bit about the company for anyone who's listening and watching and doesn't know. Okay. But you do bring up a good point too, because you're right. It's the camaraderie that comes from that, and just being around such a big group of people. That is nice, right? And when you have your own company, you still get that in pieces, like maybe if you have a big project or all those things, but it's not like there's definitely...
Right, it's not a daily, No, I think the camaraderie, like you said, is so important. Every day that I would be there, the Monday to Friday, I would learn something, from someone, because I would make sure that we had meetings every Monday where we would talk about, okay, what cameras, and it was at the time at Multiview, where we were moving into the digital arena. We were going from Betacam to all the different formats, and there were so many formats at that time. So it was really important to hear people's experiences or things that happened with clients. There were some clients that were a bit more difficult than other clients. How do you handle that? So we really got to develop and grow, not just individually, but also as a team.
And have a dirty slumber party.
And we would have dinners. We would have dinners about once a month where that's where the dirty part came in. I mean, not that, but we could just like let loose and hang out.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
Got to clarify
okay, I don't
to make sure.
Make it. Yeah.
Yes, but that's where the conversations and people
Yes.
let loose a little bit, right? Having a couple of drinks and really got to know each other on a personal basis too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Makes sense. Oh, that's great. Okay. So you've spent decades telling other people's stories. And I know even this for you, I really appreciate you being on the podcast because I know this is the reverse role for you.
Yeah.
You're doing great though.
Thank you.
Doing
I'm
wonderful.
trying.
You are. No, and it's just your expertise, right? I think that in itself is just so valuable for people to hear, right? These journeys, these careers. Like I said, I've been fortunate to have so many amazing guests, and I feel like everyone shares a different but similar things, right?
Sure.
Where you're doing all these things and just becoming, you're a good leader, but all the things that it kind of took to get you there and the experiences and all of that. So when we go back to, telling other people's stories, what have been those stories that taught you about being a human or just being human?
Well, I think starting with the medical stories, one of the first stories I did was on head trauma. I'll never forget that. And it was, it was eye-opening because there was someone that was in a coma. We didn't know what was going to happen. And it was really devastating, or seeing people that have the BRCA1 gene and they're at stage 4 breast cancer. Those kinds of stories make you really aware of your mortality, right? When I worked at Lifetime Medical Television for about a year and a half. There was someone I was editing for the producer, and while I'm cutting the piece, and this is back in the 90s, so it's a long time ago, in the early 90s, in the piece, the man has had, a heart attack, and he's in the ambulance. They're following him in the ambulance. I didn't do that. I wasn't on that shoot. And he's talking, his wife is there, and he ends up passing away. And it was just, 20 frames earlier, he was alive, and then, he's gone.
Oh, that's terrible. So on camera,
yeah, it was on
passed.
camera.
Oh,
yeah,
that's awful.
So, it was such a, these stories that, that had such an impact on me. Of course, I've never forgotten it. So it makes you, it's an eye-opening experience. And then on the other side of that, it's bringing people, to life, asking them about themselves, because people, we all have a story. And just, that's the human part, is being able to connect with someone and have them think of things that they maybe never would have thought of, or things that they were too shy to express. I have a good friend of mine who's an artist, and I did a little biography about her and how she got into painting later in life. Really talented woman, incredible. And there was a question that I asked her, and she was like, oh my gosh, it's really making me so embarrassed, but I do want to talk about it. So it's those moments where you don't even realize the impact that you have. It's almost like giving someone, a hug that needs a hug,
Well, that's perfect conversation for the podcast, because you don't know what someone is also going through. Of course. Right? And so sometimes these little things, they seem little, but they're really bigger.
Yeah, they're big things. Well, the little things always tell you the big things, right?
Exactly.
It's the little things.
They add up, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, a hug, maybe someone who's having a really bad day, who got some really bad news, or is dealing with, an aging parent, or a spouse who's going through a health issue, or going through a health issue
themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. You just don't know sometimes, because people aren't always transparent about those things, understandably so, right? Because there are people that are private. There are people that don't want to put a burden on anyone, right? So sometimes you never know. And you're right. And the story, that's going to stick with me too, of just watching someone pass
of course,
on camera. Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah. That is terrible. I mean, and that too, kind of that, just seeing that, what do you, how do you even react to that? So you've done it all, Christiane. You've seen and done it all.
I don't know.
Okay, well, let's go to something a little less.
Okay, let's go.
I didn't mean to. Yeah. No, but that's a memorable thing. I'm glad you shared that, because that's a memorable thing.
No, I was thinking about
a very unglamorous thing to see in the industry, right? That is what it's not all. When people think, I think of video production and all the.
That it's all entertainment and fun and
exactly. And you've worked with some very famous clients. You've worked with some, very big, well-known companies, obviously, right? So you've worked with the best of the best, and when you see all of that, you see that. It's funny, right? Because I'll post stuff on social media. media. It's like, oh, you got to work with so-and-so. Like we did a shoot actually back in the day with Kelly Ripa.
Oh,
if you remember,
okay.
if she ever listens to this,
yeah.
she was wonderful and lovely, and we got to do it in her house. And I remember how excited I was for that, you know.
For Gaynor.
Exactly.
Gaynor
Exactly. Yeah. Shout out to that. Was one of your, you know, your greatest clients.
Yeah.
So
they're great.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You see all that stuff, but then you don't see the other stuff, right? You don't see obviously the story of the man passing on camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Okay. So let's go now to this one about your documentaries.
Okay.
Now, we've talked a little bit about them. Obviously, they all seem to center on resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So why does this theme resonate with you? And you've talked about it a little bit. Obviously, we've talked about, you know, your Cuban roots and all of that. But that resilience theme, right? That's true with even some of the newer work that you're doing.
Oh, yes. No, a lot of the newer work, too, is a lot Holocaust-based, right? So first-generation Holocaust survivors as well as second-generation survivors, which, of course, you know, they exhibit such resilience. And I think for me, you know, it's about trauma and overcoming trauma. So, you know, my family, different obviously from the Holocaust, but leaving the homeland and losing everything that you held on to so dearly, your family, your home, your life, and starting over again. And so many of my family members have had to start over again. They've left Cuba, and, you know, a lot of them are in their 50s and 60s. It's really difficult. Imagine having to leave your country and go someplace else, learn a whole new language, a whole new system. And it's really, I mean, the dichotomy between Cuba and America is so vast. You know, internet, Uber. I mean, there's so many things. Uber Eats, Lyft, you know, just... It's astronomical. It's overwhelming. Now Cuba has gotten, well, now it's really difficult there. But a couple of years ago, they were acclimating a little bit, getting the internet and being able to use WhatsApp, but it's so not the same, you know? But so I guess the resilience is something that really speaks to me. And I too, you know, having to move here from Canada and starting over, you know, again. You know, I was much younger, but you know, I was getting used to a whole new country and starting a career in this country. So it's all about not giving up and just always just looking forward and doing the best that you can with what you have.
Well, and I love what you just said too, because for those of us, you know, I'm first generation. So my parents came here and, you know, obviously we come from, you know, a doctor family, but they still, you know, my dad still had to start his career fresh here without the contacts, you know, without the same base that he would have had there. My mom's, you know, father owned a hospital.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Family,
okay.
In India, right? So it would have been easier to stay in India,
of course,
and go through that route, right? And obviously for me, if I had been a doctor, it would have probably been a more, you know, easier path, which I said that to a friend the other day, and she said, that's so funny that you're saying a doctor would have been an easier path. But it would have been, you know, of course, minus all the years of med school.
Yes.
But everything else, I mean, it would have been a stable, steady career. I wouldn't have had some of these, you know, I think periods of unemployment. I mean, who knows? Right. But it wouldn't have been the same way, right? Because as you know, this industry is tough. It is not for the faint of heart.
Yes.
Right? And it looks glamorous. And as we've talked about, it really isn't.
Yeah.
And you have to be resilient, even to work in this industry.
Of course.
You know?
Yes,
because,
that's true. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. So for everyone, you know, who's watching or listening, who has come here and kind of started, you know, fresh or done something in a different field or a different industry, I really applaud that. I think that is something amazing about that versus somebody who just kind of inherits a business or something, right? That's tough too. There's different challenges.
Of course, but it's exactly. I was going to say there's different, right, there are different challenges.
Exactly. So you bring up a good point with that. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So going to my next question here. You have interviewed so many people over the years, as we've talked about. If there's any tea, Christiane, I'm here for it. But has anyone ever completely changed the way that you see life?
Has anyone completely changed the way that I see life? Well, I think each person that I've interviewed has somehow has touched me, you know, in some way. I really do love what I'm doing, as difficult as it has been at times, right? You know, there can be grueling hours, 18-hour days. But I think, yes, because I really listen. So I get something from even the ADHD parent. I think about her dealing with her son that has ADHD and even though I don't have ADHD. Well, sometimes I think I do. That we all have a little bit of ADHD.
I feel like everybody who works in the industry has a little
bit of ADHD. But there are things that I learn and that I glean from each of those interviews that I've done. Whether it's the mom talking about her experience, feeling lost and just feeling completely isolated, but realizing, oh my gosh, there is hope out there. To a Holocaust survivor that, of course, I have nothing. We really don't have anything in common but what we do have in common is that we both have. There's a suffering, right? We've all, a lot of us have suffered and have had difficult journeys, but then you come out of it. So it's the resilience again, going back to that. Yeah. So I think each person, I don't know if there's one particular person that I interviewed that I just think, oh my gosh, but Bernie, who's, I just did this documentary, Bernie Firshpan is a second generation Holocaust survivor, and he goes around to schools and tells his father's story. His father lived in the forest for 3 years and survived between the age of 10 to 12 years old, 10 to 13. And what I learned from Bernie is that it's okay to share your story, and it's actually good to share your story because it really does. It helps you, Of course, there was a lot of trauma in his life, both of his parents being Holocaust survivors. But what he's done is it's taking that poison into medicine, and he's going out there and he's really taking this really horrific story, but there's light in that story where he's going and educating the younger generations about hate and how futile and how useless and how it just doesn't, these hate campaigns, they just burn out. That it's just so much better to love and that there's just so much more power and so much more light there. So that was very, it helped me get more of a voice because he's so outspoken and I'm always behind the camera, but it really helped me see things that, it's okay to go out there and talk about these types of stories.
And what a beautiful thing, right? To take that negative, beyond negative, that's not even the right word, right?
Horrific
experience, but do some good with it, right?
Yes.
And just teach and learn. And I've had people even on this podcast who have said that, right? That if I've gone through something that's terrible, if I can help one person, and I say this,
of course,
even one person to talk about it, then I will, right? I will share that journey. I will share what I know about it because at least it can help someone and maybe it can change a life for the better.
Agreed.
Right? And so that seems like and I've been privileged enough to see the film that you did and Bernie and just his story. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's powerful,
right?
Yeah.
No, for sure. Also too, I think it's the search for similarities, right? In the people that it's interesting because we all, there's something so similar. We have this shared humanity, The
commonality.
Yeah.
Right? And it's fine. It's like we're all so different, but we're also the same too.
On many levels.
On many levels. And it's finding that. And that's where hate there's no place for hate.
No.
In my opinion, right? Yeah. Because there's just no reason that you should be hateful to another human being. Now, you may not like some people, and some people
that's
rightfully
normal.
so.
Of course, they can rub you the wrong way.
They can do something not so nice. But the hate and just the not liking someone on the basis of religion or sex
or color of their skin. Ridiculous.
Exactly. That absolutely no tolerance for that.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay. Agreed. So now we hear so much about preserving family photos. This is kind of going in a little different direction.
Okay.
But why is preserving someone's story just important? So kind of what we're just talking about, right? Where it's like obviously you're telling stories. Each one of them is so memorable for a different reason, right? That's why you can't say, okay, this is the story that defined my career, right? You could say some interesting ones or some highlights, of course, or some things that stand out. But why is it so important to preserve the story and in the way that you're doing it, right? With doing these documentaries, with doing these films, with even just doing, a corporate video shoot, right? Where someone is talking, maybe getting a little personal too, right? Obviously, you have done all sorts of videos over the years, but where someone's getting a little personal.
Well, I think, it's for memory, right? That you're able to relive that experience or that person long after they're gone. So that's, one of our projects or one of our mottos is like preserving your legacy, right? So it's so important. My today actually is my stepmother's birthday. So she passed away a couple years ago. But Mary, my good friend, and her sister Rita sent me a video of Beverly at her birthday, and it was just so good to see it. It makes you sad, but it's just, you're back there at that time and you're remembering it. And that's the power of video, of film. It's just, it transports you to a book is one thing. The theater is something, but it's fleeting. You can go back and revisit that moment with a book, right? Or, you go back to see the play. But with video, or on demand, whatever, you can just go back and watch that link over and over again and just feel that closeness again and just remember that moment. So I think it's so, it's just such a wonderful gift.
It is, and I don't know why it reminds me of this. I think it's Black Mirror, but there's a show. Okay. I think it's Black Mirror where it's like you can see a photo. It's like you could see a photo and then you're able to actually go back into the photo and relive it. I was like, I wish that was real life. Like I wish, only if you wanted to go back.
Yeah, for the good photos. Well, that's there's a film similar to that where you go, kind of, where, she's watching the movie. It's Mia Farrow, Purple Rose of Cairo, Woody Allen film. So she goes to the theater and watches this film every single day. She has a terrible marriage. And one day they see her sitting in the audience and they invite her into the movie. Oh, it's such a great film.
Oh, I have to look that up. I haven't actually seen that one.
Yeah, the Purple Rose of Cairo. There's a plug, Woody Allen. Well, but it's a really good film.
Who's your inspiration as far as like a filmmaker? And you could think about this. I know this is off the cuff, or who inspires you?
Who inspires me? Oh my gosh, Smitha. Well, there's so many great films. I really like Lena Wertmüller, an Italian filmmaker. She's just incredible, and I'm trying to think. Okay, let me think and go back to that.
We'll come back to that. Yeah. And I want to Google because I'm not familiar with her work. But tell me more about her work.
She did a film called Seven Beauties and Swept Away by an Unusual Destiny in the Blue Sea of August. Really good. About
that's a great name.
Yeah, and Madonna redid the movie with Guy Ritchie. But I'm trying to think of who else do I love. Capra. I love who did The Sound of Music. That's my favorite film.
Google. That's gonna be someone watching.
So maybe let me think of.
But those are great references. Oh, those are timeless.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of who do I. Oh my God, director wise, who I really Capra.
No, those are great answers.
So okay, but let's go on. Let's move on.
No, but those are great answers,
How
and
are we
I like
doing
it
for time.
We're good on time, yeah. We're good on time, yeah.
Good.
I know. It's funny, these conversations. Hopefully it's going by fast for you too.
No,
hopefully.
It is. No, it's good.
They always go by kind of fast. So, but all right, I got my eye on the clock right there.
Yeah.
Okay, but I do want to make sure we get through all these questions because these are all good ones. And the next one, shifting gears, but kind of what we've talked about here in the past. You've led teams for years, right?
Yeah.
So what's one mistake that you've seen professionals make? And it can be young professionals, it can be people that are later on in careers, but what's a mistake that people often make or you've seen people make?
You mean in leading people, being a leader? What are the mistakes that they make?
Maybe we'll do a two-parter, maybe in being a leader and being somebody, being an employee.
Well, I think it goes back to listening and paying attention. I think sometimes, leaders, I know when I started out in the, it's so cutthroat, right? When I was in real television. And a couple of times I would notice that my boss, not my immediate boss, but the person that I would report to directly, right, would be, a little bit insecure. And so they could be mean, it would come out that way. And a lot of times, I guess people would think that it was a necessary to scream and yell. And I'm so not like that. Like, there's no reason to panic. And so I think that's a mistake. And I think trying and belittling people are going to make mistakes. I don't know, in terms of, and I can't remember, but of course I made mistakes or things that I didn't understand. I think one of the things that some employees, what they would do is if they didn't understand something, they'd pretend that they understood what they were doing. And then that, there's a ripple effect. If you don't know what you're doing, then, it'll affect the teleprompter because the script isn't right or the story's not on the mark or you've booked the wrong guest. There were so many there could be so many repercussions.
Oh,
so
it could
I
be
guess
terrible,
it's also,
right? Yeah,
it could be a little bit disastrous, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's more trying to feel insecure. And I think, you asked about what's a good leader. It's where you empower the people. And I've always surrounded myself by people that know much more than I do. Always. And to be able to know what you don't know, right? Because if you don't know, if you think you know everything, my God, it's not possible. So I've always made sure.
Then you're very
to
arrogant.
have people, yes, but a lot of people think that they really do, just to be open. So I think some leaders that I've had, or people that worked for other people, and I would see that interaction, I would think, you know what it taught me is I'll never be that way. And
I love that you can take that away from a bad leader, right? So you can take away obviously the good, but the bad too. If this is what I don't want to be,
exactly,
because I see how this impacts.
And there's no
people.
reason to be. And sometimes people with power, on some level, can be a little bit detrimental. You have to know how to harness that power and to use that power for good, to inspire and to educate and inform and help, not to belittle.
Not to belittle. And I do love, and I remember this, I'm smiling because I remember this from even when I was working, for you, working with and for you.
Yeah.
I remember you would say, like, if you don't know something, tell me.
Yes,
because the
of
worst
course.
thing you can do is pretend you understand. And then, I would do obviously video shoots and go and do the shoot and have no idea what you're doing, right? Yeah. Or not understand a specific
or not
part.
get the questions or not.
Right.
Yeah, of course,
right.
of course. And it's okay to not. And listen, I started, I just watched, that's how I learned.
Yeah. And it's funny because I feel like my generation, I feel like we can ask for help. Like, we're not afraid to ask for help, and I can't talk about the whole generation, of course, but I know for me, it's never bothered me, but maybe this is a stigma, but there are different generations that they'll say, oh, these people don't want to ask for help, or, I feel like, but we've always kind of been tuned, because if you don't, the worst thing you can do is not ask for help and then mess it up.
Right. And not ask for help because you don't think you need the help when you need the help. I don't know. Right.
Right. It's
it's kind of like,
it's a skill also,
and
knowing
to not
what you don't know.
be afraid to not, exactly, of course.
Yeah, knowing and not being afraid to ask.
And we try to, I would try always to have an open door policy and say, come in with anything,
Yeah.
People, it's such a cliche. No question is too dumb, right? But
you
there
did.
isn't.
But you did. You made people comfortable. To your point, that is a good leader too. Making people comfortable enough to saying you can come in and you can ask me. Yes. And there's not going to be repercussions, right?
Not at
I think
all.
when you're younger, you always worry you're going to get in trouble, right?
Of course.
You're still, But knowing that it's okay, it's better for you to ask me than to mess it up. I love that. I love that. Okay, so going back to the film stuff, right? You have an exciting film that's coming up. And I actually have one question I skipped, but we'll come back to it. But you have an exciting film.
Sure.
So let's talk about that, because we're kind of winding down slowly.
Okay.
So let's talk about that at a high level. And then at the end of the podcast, I want to go back to it and tell people where they can find it.
Okay.
But just at a high level and without giving away too much.
Yes,
It's very interesting. So tell, for everyone watching and listening,
sure.
a little bit about it.
Okay. So this is a film, the name of the film, it's a short film. It's a short documentary. I think it's 28 minutes. And it's called How We See. And it's about a blind musician who is also a piano tuner. And he's been living in New York City his entire life. And he was born blind. And it's one of those resilient, stories. And what, the takeaway when you asked me, did anyone ever, change me? Of course, each person changes me in a different way, right? Each person that I've interviewed. But spending so much time with Tom and his wife, Rita, was, really eye-opening, right? And what I saw with the two of them, because she was blind as well. She just unfortunately passed away a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. But is that you don't just see through your eyes, There's so many other ways to see and to navigate this world. So it's a really people really like it. It was an honor to do it, and it's a really good. I feel it's a really good film.
That's incredible to be a blind piano player.
Yeah, and tuner. Yeah.
That's incredible.
And she sings, and she wrote a book on glaucoma. She did so much for the blind community, getting talking elevators in her building. It just two incredible individuals.
And doesn't it put things in perspective too? Because I know,
Yes.
sometimes you're going through your daily life and
Yes.
something happens and it's of course
Yes.
maybe significant in the moment, but then you think about it and you're like, wait, I'm healthy. I have,
Yes.
I have all these.
Everything has to get the perspective. But what's amazing is they don't look at themselves that way. They don't even see themselves as being blind, and that's what's so incredible.
That is incredible.
That's not,
Right. And it doesn't it's not a poor me. I have to deal with this.
Never.
Yeah, that is a beautiful
Not
thing.
one complaint ever.
It's
spent
people like that
days
that don't
and days.
complain. It's
Yes.
people that have
it's
everything.
incredible. Yes, it's true. It's true.
The entitlement,
I know.
right, is real.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's so true. But then it's the people like this that are just, that's inspirational.
Yeah.
There's no other word. It's inspirational.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That's exciting. Okay. So the end of the podcast, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
You can tell people how to find it and all of that stuff.
Sure.
Okay. So going back to that question that I skipped over, but in line with everything we've been talking about, if someone has a story that they've always wanted to tell, but they feel that it's too late, what would you say to them? And so this, I think I know kind of the answer you're going to say, because a lot of the people that you work with, are later on in life, right?
Yeah.
But are sharing stories that are incredible. And that probably is part of what makes it so incredible because the experience is there.
Sure. Yeah. I would say it's never too late to tell your story, right? I always laugh at these, you'll see an autobiography of a 15-year-old or, a famous 15-year-old or 20-year-old. I'm like, oh my gosh, what could you possibly tell us at the age of 15 or 20? So
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt because that's funny. That is funny, right?
I mean, come on.
And it's like, oh, my life. I've been through
lived
so
my
much.
life. Exactly. At 15.
At 15.
But no, I don't think it's ever too late. And I think on the contrary, you want to hear someone's life later because you look at the wisdom and the experiences that they've had and that they're willing and able to share with you. And one of the challenges or, one of the fun challenges is getting people to open up and to share their life and their heart and their soul and their good and bad experiences with you. So no, I don't think it's never too late, right? It's never too late to do anything. I believe there was someone that became a lawyer in like late 80s or a doctor, something crazy like that. No, and age is just a number. I don't believe in that.
I agree. And I had someone on this podcast who has a company and basically she has influencers over the age of 40. And she has many wonderful influencers, but one of them was 90.
Oh, wow.
And I thought
that's
that was
great.
fascinating,
That's
right?
great.
I'm like,
yes,
that's
at
so
90,
inspirational.
imagine.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's so inspirational.
Yeah, it doesn't mean, it's only a number.
It's only a number.
It's a
and
mindset.
Both of us have just experience with, older people that maybe sadly, like you see when people are aging and if they don't embrace the age or it's really hard to watch
hard.
people that are not embracing being a certain age, right? People, especially people you care about. So I just think that's fantastic. And, of course, God willing, and your health has to be good.
Yes.
But that is just, I always say I want to do everything I can possibly do in this life. I want to travel the world.
Of
I want to
course.
do everything.
I know, and you have been. That's great.
I know.
Good for you.
Yeah,
I know. I
don't
wanted
know the
to too.
latest, and I've talked about it now a couple of times on the podcast.
Okay,
but I'm doing South Korea, Japan, and Thailand solo.
Oh, fantastic.
Later this year.
Oh,
yeah.
I went to Thailand. I loved it.
Okay, I'll have to get
I loved it.
recommendations from you.
I'll totally give you.
But yeah, I just booked
and my
that.
nephew lives there, so I'll tell you. Yeah, I'll set you up.
Mom will be happy because mom's been a little worried about me going
no,
solo.
No, well, I don't know how. Well, no, you'll have.
Okay, maybe we don't want to.
Yeah. No.
I may be better off. Okay, we'll come back. We'll put a pin in that and come back to that.
Yeah.
But it will be nice, to
you'll
do this
have
trip.
fun.
Exactly.
He's very good.
Okay, what's your favorite place you've ever been to? Since we're talking about travel, I could keep talking about travel.
One of them is Phuket in Thailand. I loved it. We stayed at this incredible luxury hotel called Mum Tree in Phuket.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up.
It was a deal because we went once a year. They have these discounts for the locals. So my sister's friend is Thai. So she got us this place and you get 90% discount.
Oh my goodness.
It was $900 a night. So we paid $90 a night. It was
that's
exquisite.
Incredible.
Yeah. Oh, it was the most luxurious place I've ever stayed at in my life.
Incredible. Well,
so that's one of my favorite places.
And I do feel like because I'm staying at the Ritz there, and I feel I don't know if I should. Well, I'm not saying my date, so it's okay. But staying at the Ritz, and I feel like it's a lot cheaper than the Ritz in other places, right? It's still not cheap, but it's cheaper.
This place was
something else.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to take a look at it.
So that's one of my favorite places, and so spiritual, and seeing the elephants. I loved Thailand. Loved it. It's really has stayed. It's one of my favorite places.
Okay, see, Mom, I'm gonna, because again, my mom's been a little worried about me
and
going
Cape
alone.
Cod too. I love Provincetown. That's one of my favorite places.
That's such a good
too.
vibe.
Yeah,
that's a little closer to home. So I love the two options, right? If you want to stay far, you want to stay closer, go far. Yeah. Oh, I think travel is the best thing you can do with your money.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Travel, it's great. I did a lot of traveling in the late 80s. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. Oh, what's another place that was your top in the 80s? What was one of your favorite places?
Well, I loved Spain. I love Spain. I love Barcelona.
Go Spain. They just won.
Yes, I know. I'm going to, my family's in Spain and my grandparents were from Spain. So I'm going to be going hopefully in November, December.
Oh, it'll be beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, and they must be ecstatic. I'm sure they're just celebrating.
Oh, they're so happy.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to keep celebrating.
Yeah. And I loved Cuba. I did. I loved it. It's one of my, it's so special to
Near
me.
and dear, of course. Yeah, of course. All right, Christiane, we are slowly wrapping up here.
Okay.
So I do want to make sure I get to, of course, the last question, which we were talking about a little bit beforehand. But what's been one of the most unglamorous moments in your life? And this can be career, it can be non-career. I know you had asked me about mine. I'll share. I'm happy to share that too. But what has been yours?
I mean, there's been so many, so many unexpected turns and, twists and turns. I guess, one of them you had shared about, losing your job. When I worked at Channel 13, we'd go from television show to television show. And, having that show end, I worked on a couple of short mini documentaries. And then when I worked on this show, 13 Live, having it end, it was just devastating. And I realized, so many people, it was so competitive. Everyone's getting their resume out. Then from there, I went to Lifetime and I got a job there. And it was the same kind of thing that, that there's a beginning and there's going to be an end if the show or the project doesn't get picked up again. So it was, it was hard being unemployed, hard, finding work. But I did it, and you just, being out of a job is literally a full-time job because you have to make phone calls and it's, constantly selling yourself. It's so hard. But
it's exhausting, right?
It is exhausting.
And you can't help but let it affect you.
Of course.
As confident of a person as you may be.
Yeah.
When you're getting rejected left and right, and I compare it to dating, which let's not go there, I mean, it is true. You can't help but feel a little impacted.
Of course.
And I think with the job stuff more even so than other things, because you're like, I'm bringing all this experience, like that's a fact, right? And then you're choosing, to rather, go with someone else for this role or just choosing to ghost me altogether. Like I remember, and people always tell you try to enjoy the time. I know,
and it's so hard. It's impossible.
Right.
That's enjoy your time off. I'm like, what time off? It's like, I know.
It's a full-time job.
No, I know.
And it's a more stressful full-time job because you don't know. There's no end in sight. You don't know what's coming.
Of course. And listen, similar to that, it's not unglamorous. I'm so happy that I have my own company. Yeah. But it's the same thing too. In a way, it's constantly we have to sell ourselves every day, right? Yeah. And get clients. And I never have a client or have a few clients, of course, at the same time. But I never sit back and just think, okay, I'm great. I don't have to go out there and sell myself anymore.
You're never complacent.
No, you can't be.
You can't be. Actually,
and you have to know what's going on. You have to know what's going on. There's so much with AI, so many new technologies that are emerging. So you constantly have to be ahead of the game because you want to bring that to your clients, right?
You have to adapt. You have to keep. You have to keep adapt. You have to adapt, and then you have to do it before everyone else, right?
Of course. Well, kind of being ahead of the curve, right?
Being ahead of the curve,
and anticipating what the needs are going to be. So. Right. Yeah, it's stressful, but it is so worth it, and it's so rewarding. And I really do bring into this company wonderful clients. That was one of the things. So I kind of look at every job that I didn't get, and there was one I really wanted to work at a company for biography. There used to be doing these biographies, and it was on the History Channel. I really wanted that job, and I was really upset when I didn't get it. And I look back and I see why I didn't get it, because I wouldn't be here if I had gotten that job,
And I've heard that actually quite a few times, right? And I've said it too.
So you have to trust.
You have to trust the process.
That you're at the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
I do believe that.
I do believe that you're on the path you're supposed to be. It may not be a glamorous path.
No,
it may not be what you thought it would be.
Not,
right?
But that's where we learn, right? Sometimes from the, and that's one of the things with the type of stories that we do, especially in these documentaries and the resilient stories, it's in the most uncomfortable moments that you really do experience the most growth, right? You don't really feel, when things are going great, you're so happy. You're not thinking about, oh yeah, well, what has this taught me? No, you're just like, you're in the moment, right?
100%.
But then when something, is really difficult, first you feel really bad. You feel bad about what's going on. But then I think you also manage to say, okay, well, I do, what's the lesson here? How can what did this mean? What is my takeaway?
Right. What can I learn from this and then be better for it, right?
Yep.
And as hard as it is, or as hard as the lesson is, or going through it or navigating it, what can I learn from this? And I do believe in that quite a bit too, where it's like, if it doesn't happen, there's a reason, right?
Yes,
it didn't
I
just
agree.
happen.
Oh yeah, it was supposed to, Exactly. And if you try, and here's the bottom, sometimes things do happen for no reason, right? But I think if you really give it your all, and you feel like this, you really did your best, then it did happen for a reason. It wasn't supposed to happen, right?
And you're not the first founder who's told me that, right? Because I feel like almost every CEO, entrepreneur, founder, whatever you want to call it, everyone has that experience, right? Where it's like, well, if I had gotten this, I may have just gotten complacent and coasted along.
This. Oh, of course. Of course. And I wouldn't have done the documentaries. If I hadn't, if Next Works, that was the other company besides Multiview, if that company hadn't changed its trajectory, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, and I'm so happy.
Yeah, that's incredible to think about when you actually do think about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
True.
All right. I feel like that's such a good place to leave off. But of course, we got to go back to how people can find you. How can they find the documentaries? I want to give you time to plug all of that. So just tell everyone listening and watching. Obviously, you can see the wonderful work that Christiane has done before even seeing any of it because of the way you've talked about it. But how can people find you? Oh,
they can find me at Terrebonne Films, which is TerreBonne Films, FILMS.com. And there's also Terrebonne, same spelling, TerreBonne Productions with an S.com. And my latest film, our latest documentary, How We See, is going to be screened at the Chain, it's CHAIN Film Festival in New York City on August 15th at 8 p.m. So we're in the slot with all the short films, and the films look really good. So it starts at 8 o'clock, and I think it probably goes till 10. And I think that was on 36th Street, but you can get that address at chainnewyorkcity.com, and they'll tell you exactly how to get tickets and where they're located.
I love that. And I'll put this on the screen too.
Oh, okay.
Of course, and I'll send it third, to you. Like we know, right? I'll make sure
some
kind
of so good.
graphic.
Thank you.
Yeah, just so people can see it and get tickets and all of that.
Okay.
But Christiane, this has been a pleasure.
Oh,
I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
I did. You made me feel very at ease and very relaxed. I hope I answered the...
Oh, I mean, this is fabulous.
Okay.
Whenever I'm doing these, I always think of all of the tidbits, right? The nuggets that I can get. And there's just so many here.
Good.
I throw everything in AI, right? And I'm like, what are the best nuggets? And every time it's like, well, you have so many to pick from. You can't even, because you want to create the shorts, right? That are like the sound bites, of course.
Yes.
And so I don't even know where I'm going to start, but I know that you
gave
a lot of really, really good advice.
Okay.
Inspirational stuff too, I think, for, people listening and watching.
Okay, good. Good. All right.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And then I always leave everyone, first of all, thank you for watching and listening, for all of the support as always. I always say that. And then I end with my favorite quote, which is very similar to what you were saying before, which is, sometimes the most unglamorous moments in life are where the real story begins. So guys, thanks again for staying with us. Christiane, thank you. Good luck with the film. I can't wait to see it. I will be there.
Thank you.
So I cannot
excellent.
Wait.
Thank you, Smith.
Yes. All right.
You're such a good support.
Oh my God. Well,
thank you.
Right back at you.
Oh, wonderful.
For, what we were saying, how we've known each other 12 years now. So right back at you.
14
years.
Or
14, yeah. 14 years since 2012.
Yeah.
So
thank you. Appreciate
this is what, these are the glamorous parts of life, or the support system that you have, and the people.
Yes. Oh, of course. And
people who uplift you. Women supporting women will always be glamorous.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks again, Christiane.
Thank you, Smith.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.